Um, so thank you for having me today. I wanted to talk about this topic, micro versus macro morality. And I think it's an important topic, and I never heard it framed this way, but I think it's a very orthodox concept of spirituality that I think is important, because I think a lot of times we get a little confused on this topic, especially in today's world of social media, lots of causes, lots of social justice, lots of things that we can follow, different movements, different causes, different lots of stuff, right? So I want to read you a part of a speech that was given at Notre Dame at law school graduation. And I'll read you the pieces of this speech, and let's kind of put it together. It was given by a man who's Notre Dame's Catholic, and I think the guy is Catholic as well. And he was talking to graduating law school, okay? And he said this in the speech, and he said a bunch of other things, but I really like this part, so I clipped it out and I created a whole talk around it. He says, Christianity teaches a micro-morality. We transform the world by focusing on our own personal morality and transformation. And I love this, right? Because this is a very inherently orthodox perspective, right? That we focus on our own personal morality and transformation, and this is how we transform the world. A new way of thinking, he says, teaches macro morality. One's morality is not gauged by their private conduct, but rather on their commitment to political causes and collective action to address social problems. Now, this is a really important thing, because this is something I see a lot of youth kind of slipping into, right? And we saw this a lot with all kinds of movements, during COVID, and there's just, there's movements all the time, right? And there was all kinds of shaming and attacking and counter-shaming and counter-attacking. If you didn't believe in the movement, or you didn't post the black square on your Instagram, or if you posted the other square on your Instagram, and all the things that happened, right? And everyone's just killing everybody and attacking everyone and fighting with everyone. And what we saw, I think, was this macro morality, right? Where he says, one's morality is not gauged by their private conduct, but rather on their commitment to political causes and collective action to address social problems. This system allows us, and this is the key part, and this is the dangerous part, not to worry so much about the strictures on our private lives while we find salvation on the picket line. We can signal our finely tuned moral sensibilities by demonstrating for this cause or that. And so I want to be clear here. What we're not saying is, we're not saying you shouldn't focus on social causes. If there's something important, whatever the social cause is, there's plenty of great social causes, whether it be environmental or racism or child rights or women's rights or minority rights or the rights of humans in general, right? This is our job, is to love our neighbor as ourselves, right? And how beautiful would it be if my job, for example, was to work on child trafficking, right? And to try to stop this horrible practice, right, of destroying the lives of children, right? That's a wonderful thing, okay? So no one's saying don't do that thing. But what he's warning us about is that thing replaces my own morality, right? That my morality becomes that thing. Everyone see what I'm saying? And that I derive my morality from, as he says, we find salvation on the picket line. Right? So I'm out protesting, Israel's takeover of Palestinian lands, okay? And that's maybe a moral cause, right? Because they did steal those lands, okay? But my salvation isn't on that picket line, right? My salvation is micro. It's personal. It's between me and God, right? And that's where the work is, okay? And then I replace that work with the work of picket lines and a social cause and a this, that, and a whatever the case may be, right? Again, I'm not saying don't do those things. If you feel strongly about anything, knock yourself out. But don't fool yourself into thinking that that's my spirituality. That's my spiritual life, right? My spiritual life is to do a cause, right? Or to fight for these people's rights. That's a great thing. But your spirituality is micro. It's personal, right? It's individual. And then he continues, we can tell people our finely tuned moral sensibilities by demonstrating for this cause or that, right? And I've had situations like this where people will say, oh, you're not fighting for child trafficking in Africa, you're a heathen, right? I do, and let me tell you all the things I've done, and I'm this amazing guy. And I'm just like, that's great that you're doing that, right? But now you're signaling how moral you are versus me or anyone else, right? By your actions, by this cause that you've joined, by this not-for-profit organization that you're fundraising for, and you're having a dinner for them, and that raises $350, which is going to go to fight child trafficking, which is great, right? But that's not your morality. And then I can take it a step further, and I can use that against other people, right? And I saw that, right? I mean, I saw kids who didn't post a black square get attacked because they didn't post a black square. Now, of course, we can argue about whether or not a black square ends racism. I don't think it does, okay? But that's another issue. The issue was, you're not moral like me, right? And so now my morality is based on my association with a social cause. But that's not morality, okay? And we'll kind of get into why we do this, right? As humans, this is what we do, okay? And maybe I'll continue, and we'll kind of get into things here. So St. Paul says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So our call is to be transformed. That's what we're doing on earth, right? We're called to transform into the image and likeness of God. That's why the Feast of the Transfiguration is such a great feast, right? Because it's our feast, right? It's what we're called to be. We're called to transfigure into the image and likeness of Christ, right? That's all the work we do here on earth. That's why we're on earth. So let's kind of look at the basics. And I love this quote by Elder Paisius. He says, if you want to help the church, it is better to try to correct yourself rather than be looking to correct others. Now let's just stop there. That's very common, right? We all can talk about the problems in the church, right? We all have lists, right? Ask your parents. Tell me about the clergy. Abuna, Sayyidina, and they can give you lists, right? The Holy Synod, and we can go, the Catholics and the Orthodox, and this is fun. This is sport for us, right? Attacking clergy, right? But what he's saying here is, if you want to help the church, it's easy to say, oh, this guy's no good, and this guy should be doing that, and that guy's, But what's harder, right, is correct yourself. He says that's how you do it. That's how you fix the church. Continues. Rather than be looking to correct others, if you manage to correct yourself, and I want you to look at the wording, if you manage to correct yourself, one small part of the church has been corrected. Now he adds a little stipulation, if you manage to do it. Because all of you have tried, haven't you? To fix something about yourself that you don't like. How's it going? Not well, right? It's hard. It's very hard, right? And we can spend a lot of time and we do the same thing and we fall into the same thing. And there's part of me that I don't like about me. There are many parts of me I don't like about me. Ugly parts. And I wish I didn't have them. And I wish I was better. And I try to fix them. And then Satan sends me just the perfect temptation and the right person in the right situation. And I'm in the right, and there I am again, right? Bam. I'm just as upset as I always am. And I swore I'd never, get upset about this again. And there I go, right? And so he's saying if you can manage to correct yourself, then a small part of the church, and we'll see why this is important. Naturally, if everyone did the same thing, the body of the church would be in good shape. But today, and he's talking about, and he's writing here in the 1960s, so you can imagine today's even worse than what in the 1960s. But today, people concern themselves with anything but themselves. Look at that line. People concern themselves with anything but themselves. Right? And now, I want you to imagine in the 60s, what opportunities you had to be concerned with other people. right? So who'd you have in the 60s? You had like your family, right? You'd get together on Sundays or the Eid, and then you can say, Uncle, Wagdi, he's no good, and Tante Susu, she's a gossip, and Adil is, whatever he is, right? And we could pick apart our families. It was wonderful. It was fun. It was enjoyable, right? Your mom would talk about all her sisters and how bad they were, and your cousins and how they're no good. But we had a limited scope, right? 40 people we could really pick apart, right? Then we had to go to church, and we can go to the meeting, and then we can pick apart everyone at the meeting, right? All the youth, what's wrong with every one of the youth. That's fun. We can pick apart the clergy, but not many of them, right? Because there's just a few in the church. We didn't have access to a lot of other, right? So the most I could, attack is 100 people, right? That's my best shot, right? I got 100 good people that I could just, I could name all 100 and tell you what's wrong with all 100 of them very easily. I'm very good at this, right? However, now we're in a different world, right? We're not in the 60s. Now I have access to attack millions of people, right? I can go down Facebook, right? And I could just go down posts, right? And instead of just swiping, I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to swipe. I'm going to comment. I'm going to fix this guy, right? Someone needs to be fixed here, right? And I'm the man to do it, right? You just swipe. Just move on, right? Just go. La. Dislike, I have some comments, and we're going to go back and forth because something's going to change. I'm going to change it, right? Instagram, you name the thing, okay? And now I have opportunity to hate and attack millions of people, okay? Why is this a problem, right? Because Satan's first attack on us as Christians is to do what? Don't look at yourself. Look at someone else, right? This is Satan 101. Don't look at you, look at her. Because she's really bad. Let's talk about her. Let's talk about him. Let's talk about the servants. Let's talk about the deacons. Let's talk about the clergy. Let's talk about anybody but whom? Yourself. Okay? Now, why is this fun? This is the last part. He says, you see, judging others is easy, whereas working on yourself takes effort. There it is. Judging others is easy. Working on yourself takes effort. Right? I don't like looking at myself in the mirror and seeing my ugly. Right? I would much rather see your ugly. I'd rather talk about your ugly with a bunch of friends. We can all get together and we can all discuss how this person's crazy. And this person, she's just a gossip. And she's controlling. He's manipulative. He's an idiot. And that's so much more enjoyable, right, than talking about my own ugly. Right? I'm sorry, Mamiki. I should use better words. Right? So the key here is I don't want to work on myself because working on myself is hard. Okay? In fact, any of you who have tried to work on yourself, you know the answer. Right? It's very difficult. And you fail a lot and it's frustrating. And you go to Abuna and you say, I did the same thing again and I didn't think I would. And here I am in the same position, saying the same thing. And I'm very frustrated. And what can I do to be better? And it's hard, right? And so it's much more enjoyable to not do that, right? And if I can feel self-righteous by focusing on someone else's sin, then it's a win. And if I have the opportunity using this little phone here to access millions of bad people who I can attack and distract myself from me, well, then I win, right? And this thing becomes a gold mine, right? I can just keep swiping and attacking everybody, looking on Instagram, looking for anyone to attack, right? Anyone posts anything. And look how much opportunity I have. I could swipe endlessly for decades, right? And not finish the internet. All right, so both of these quotes I loved. Leave all human injustices to the Lord, for God is the judge. But as to yourself, be diligent in loving everybody with a pure heart. You see the juxtaposition, right? Leave all human injustices. Injustice, he called it what it is. Someone's unjust to you, fine. Leave it to God. But for yourself, you have one job. Love everybody with a pure heart. That's your job. Not attack, not fix, not shame, not cancel, not correct. Love, right? And in fact, this is what we saw Christ do as a model. Love, 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 right? Unfortunately, we kind of get in the business of being the priest or being the servant. And we give our position to anyone, right? And not everyone is called to give advice. In fact, there are people who give very, very bad advice, right? And I'm sure Abuna is like, who told you this stuff? Like, oh, my friend, don't talk to your friend anymore, right? So not everybody is supposed to give advice. This is a calling from God. Not everyone is supposed to webbach, right? To shame someone or to attack someone or to tell them what's wrong. Because not everyone, that's a gift, right? How to correct someone in a loving way, it's not easy. It's easy for us to just like, oh, you're just a piece of garbage and this is what's wrong with you. That's easy. Right? What's hard is to do it in a loving way, in a way they're going to accept. Right? And many of you have experienced now, I'm sure, friends who attack one another and no one's accepting anything. Right? In fact, she's just crazy and he's an idiot and there we go. Right? Nobody has accepted anything because you weren't called to that. What you're called to is you love everybody with a pure heart. That's the calling. Right? And that's hard. That's not easy. Right? And the thing about Christianity is very simple. It's not complicated. It's not complicated at all. It's very simple, but it's very hard to do. Simple, but hard. Right? And in any situation, you know the answer. Love your neighbor as yourself. There it is. Right? But in certain situations, it's very hard to deal with someone at that level. I saw this quote and I just fell in love with it. If you desire freedom, then try first to free yourself from yourself. You gotta think about that one for a week. If you want to be free, because especially in the United States, we talk about freedom and I can do whatever I want, and la 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 la, right? If you want to be free, try to free yourself from yourself, your own bondage. This is the work of Christianity. This is the work of repentance. This is the work of digging deep and dying to oneself, right? And this is what we're called. This is micro-morality. And Christianity has always operated on the level of micro-morality. We don't operate on the level of let's get everybody else, right? That's not our religion. In fact, when we saw Christians do that during the Crusades and other times, it's not a pleasant chapter in the history of Christianity when crusades would go into other countries and kill Muslims by the tens of thousands in the name of God. This was a black mark on the history of Christianity. It wasn't us, it was the Roman Catholic Church. But nonetheless, many people to this day will say, oh, Christians, weren't you guys the ones who did the crusades? And the atrocities of the crusades, right? In fact, even the Christians on themselves, right? What the Eastern Orthodox Church did to the Coptic Orthodox Church, killed hundreds of thousands of people, right? In the name of God. Not a good time. So our calling is this idea of transformation. And it's micro, it's personal. This is what we do, right? This is the Transfiguration Feast. So the point of our life is not to find ourselves, but to transform ourselves into this image of Christ. That's what we are. That's what we're here for. That's the work. It's not about finding me. It's about finding God in me, right? And how God wants me to be with his brothers and sisters. So have you ever been to a children's hospital? It's a very depressing place. And they have walls like this all the time. These are pictures, kids that the former patients have drawn on the walls, right? These are kids who used to be at the hospital, and they draw these pictures. And why do you think they draw them? Why? Why do you think the hospital puts these up? Thoughts?
Change the ambiance of the hospital.
Okay.
Maybe, like you mentioned, it's depressing when you walk into a children's hospital. I mean, seeing all the colors on the walls, maybe we'll line up a child pointed.
Okay, good. And so sometimes you see pictures of former patients up. And so you see they put pictures of the kids and they're like showing you, well, now I play with, baseball, and here's me doing ballet, and here's me singing, and here's me playing the piano. Why do they do that? Why do they put pictures like that up of the...
To give hope.
To give hope, right? They show you the former patients and they say, look, if you do your treatment and you go to chemo and you do your exercises and you eat right and you go to medicine, there's hope for you, right? This kid used to look like this and now he's playing baseball. This kid used to look like this and now she's doing ballet. There's hope, right? Does anyone see anything like this familiar in our church?
Icons.
Yeah. Former patients, right? So what do? We line the walls, just like the hospital. Isn't the church a hospital? Right? And we line the walls with what? Former patients. St. Paul, St. Mary of Egypt, the sinful woman, St. Moses the Black. Former patients, right? People who were broken and who transformed themselves. And when they transformed themselves, they became a light to everybody else. Right? This is the model of Christianity. These people didn't go out and tell everyone what they're doing wrong. They didn't, dislike Instagram posts and attack people. They did micro. They worked on themselves. And when God called them, they lit up. That was their time to be called, right? Not before. And we love to jump ahead and say, we need to spread light to the world. We need to tell people what's wrong with them. We need to... Do you? Were you called to that? Our calling for sure is to transform ourselves, is to work on me. And when God calls me and says, now it's your time to touch this one person, I'm going to put one person right in front of you. Now that's your time. Then you do. Right? And so again, this concept of using Christianity as a weapon against everyone else and attacking everybody else and saying how bad everyone else is and how bad the society is and how if only the society was better, our kids... This is fruitless, right? Because in the end, all the societies we've ever lived in are bad, right? It hasn't been good ever, right? The Roman Empire was bad. I mean, it's never been good, right? We've never lived in a good... The church has never been in a non-hostile environment, right? It grows in hostile environments. That's where it grows. Right? That's where it flourishes, as a matter of fact. Church does better when it's persecuted. Right? We've never been in a place where everyone's Christian, everyone's loving everyone, and that's not what we do. That's not how the church has gone all these years. And so this is ultimately the goal, right? What St. Paul says, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. I've transformed myself, and now I am like Christ, right? And how does this come about? Right? How do we get to this point? St. Cyril of Alexandria has this beautiful quote. He says, just as by melting two candles together you get one piece of wax, so I think one who receives the flesh and blood of Jesus is fused together with him by this communion. And the soul finds that he is in Christ and Christ is in him. So we have a liturgical method, a liturgical approach, a Eucharistic approach to this transformation, right? That we unite with Christ in the Eucharist, right? And so the Eucharist isn't just an important thing. The Eucharist is everything, right? It's our life, right? It's Christ. Christ is life. Without life is death, right? So this whole process of micro-morality, transformation, the self-changing, becoming like Christ happens when Christ becomes a part of us, right? And the way St. Cyril of Alexandria says it is beautiful, right? You take two candles, right? You can imagine, you take one of these like cheapo candles, right, that don't smell good, right? And then you take one from Bed Bath and Body Works, right? It's lavender or whatever, right? And then you melt them both together and you make one big candle, okay? The whole candle will smell like lavender, right? Even though you mix it with a cheapo candle, right? It infuses itself with the other. And you can't tell which one's the old one and which one's the new one. You've melted into something new, right? And this is what the Eucharist is, right? It morphs us into him. We become a part of him and he becomes a part of us. And then when people see us, they see him, right? And so my job as a Christian is to do what? Be less me and more him, right? And the only work I can do, because he's already in me, the only work I can do is less me, right? What did Christ say about the self? Right? Because if we over-exaggerate the self, what are we? Arrogant and prideful. But if we under-exaggerate the self and we make the self very low, then we have a low self-esteem, and that's not good either. So Christ doesn't call us to have a super high self-esteem and be arrogant, nor does he want us to have a low self-esteem. What does he say about the self? Deny the self. Inkar al-nafs, right? There is no self. There's not high, it's not low. It's just not there, right? And the less of me there is, the more of whom there is. He must increase and I must decrease. So I just make less me, and by natural process, it's more him, because he's already inside me, right? Didn't Jesus say the kingdom of heaven is where? Inside you. It's already there. So ultimately, this is our calling, right? Absorbing the characteristics of God, to be in his image and his likeness. And as we enter into life with him, we become like him. We talk like him. We think like him. We act like him. We love like him. We serve like him, right? As we get to know this person, right? And we see this, right? When you were in high school, right? And you had a friend that you're really close with, okay? I remember when I was in high school, I had a friend, I don't know why, but he used to always say scrub. What's up, scrub? How you doing, scrub? Scrub. He just kept saying scrub, right? And he said everything was just scrub, right? And that's how he ended every sentence. Guess what I started saying? Scrub, right? Hey, scrub. What's up, scrub? And my mom's like, scrub da, right? And she attacked me, but that's not important. I'm getting therapy for that. But the point is, I started talking like him because I'm just around him, right? And I like him. So I started acting like him, okay? And that's why parents are so worried about bad influences, right? Because if you like the person, you start acting like them and talking like them, and thinking like them. And so our relationship with Christ, as we enter a relationship with him, we become what? Like him. We think like him and we talk like him. And the more we read about him and the more we see how he handled situations, the more we get him, right? And the gentle way with which he handled people and the loving way with which he handled people. And we start to be more like him. Right? One of the things that people used to say about Abuna B'Shoy Kamel, the saint Abuna B'Shoy Kamel, was we had never seen Jesus until we saw you. People used to say that all the time about him. We knew Christ when we knew you, right? And Abuna B'Shoy Kamel used to always say, people don't need to hear about Christ anymore. They've heard enough. They need to see him, right? And this was in the 60s, right? Before sermons were all over Facebook and YouTube and Anaphora and everything else, right? So that's our calling, right? And so, so who is this God that is our creator and father and the one we're being up, right? And being that we may end up looking like? A father is most happy when his son acts, looks, thinks, behaves like he does, right? So this is a common characteristic, right, of parents, okay? Parents are very excited when the kid's born, right? Oh, she has my ears, she has my nose, she has my eyes, he has my hands, whatever, right? They like that stuff. And then as you get older, right, your parents are very excited when you act the way they do, right? Like, every once in a while, someone will say something and I'll think of what I would say back. And then I find that my son says it right before I say it. And he says it exactly the way I would say it. And he go, well, blah, blah, blah. And he'll say something. I go, that's exactly what I was thinking, right? Now, maybe he's wrong. I don't care. He's like me, right? And that's all I care about, right? I'm like, yeah, I raised the winner, because he's like me, right? This is what we want, right? In fact, parenting is what? When you parent a kid, what do you do when you parent a kid? How do you parent? When the kid does something wrong, you say, no, koch. And when the kid does something right, you say, yes, good. Okay, now I'm going to replace the words here. When the kid does something I wouldn't do, I say, don't do that. And when the kid does something I would do, I say, good job. So what am I doing? I'm making him like me. Right? That's what parents do. We just make the kid like us. That's fine, because that's all we know. That's all I can do, right? I can't make him into someone else. Okay? Obviously, the goal is what? To make him like Christ. And to make myself like Christ, such that when I make him like me, I end up making him like Christ, right? That's the ultimate goal of parenting. So St. Athanasius has this wonderful quote. He says, by analogy, God is to Christians as the sun is to the moon. So think of the sun and the moon. As the sun is the exclusive source of light, so God is the sole source of glory. As the moon reflects light, so believers reflect God's glory, right? So the moon is just a dead rock, right? It doesn't have any light of its own. It's nothing. It's just dust, right? But it reflects the sun. And I only know the sun is there because I can see the moon at night, right? So in the darkness of this world, I become the moon to the world. Right? And people don't see the sun, they see me. They don't see God, they see me. So I have to reflect God. Right? So again, let's go back to this micro-macro morality. By micro-morality, I reflect Christ. Macro-morality means I attack people and I shame and I go after causes and I push for other things. But that doesn't make people see Christ. That's just a cause. Again, you can do that cause, but don't confuse the two. St. Augustine says, a Christian is a mind through which Christ thinks, a heart through which Christ loves, a voice through which Christ speaks, and a hand through which Christ helps. So we become the visible, tangible aspects of who Christ is. Right? That's what we are as Christians. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I could just go on for like 30 more slides or something. I'm realizing I think I've made the point at some point. All right, 30 more slides it is. Okay. This is just a fun story about St. Anthony. He says, Lord, how is it that some die when they are young and while others drag on to extreme age? So St. Anthony starts questioning God. He's like, how come you're killing some kids over here? And then the old people who, are 99 and want to die, you're not letting them die, right? And then he says, why are some people rich and some people poor? Why are wicked men rich and good people poor? He's asking the same questions we all ask. God, why are you doing this? And God gives him this great answer. Keep your attention on yourself. Temelak, right? It's none of your business. Great answer. These things are according to the judgment of God, and it is not to your advantage to know anything about them. Again, what is he doing? He's doing his level of social justice, right? How come there's rich people? How come there's poor people? Shouldn't we be equalizing people? Why are these people living a long time? Stop. Focus on you, right? Don't get into this. Now, of course, he didn't have social media. Otherwise, he'd be on his phone doing these things, St. Anthony. But, he is the best of his ability, right? Okay. I love this quote by St. John Chrysostom. He says, for Christians, above all men, are forbidden to correct the stumblings of sinners by force. And this is important because this is something we do a lot of. Now, I get it when we do it with little kids, right? You got to come to church and you got to blah, 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 because they're little. But then they get older and we keep doing it. And, you're just this 27-year-old and his mom's dragging him by the ear. Let's make a kinisa. And you're like, is that working? Is that effective? Is that Christianity? Doesn't Christianity have to be a choice? Can you force someone to be a Christian? Does it work? It is necessary to make a man better not by force, but by persuasion. We neither have authority granted to us by law to restrain sinners, nor, if it were, should we know how to use it. Since God gives the crown to those who are kept from evil not by force, but by choice. So he's saying even if you forced someone by law, and you said you can't sin by law, well, you haven't done anything. Because they're only doing it because they don't want to go to jail. You haven't. And he says at the very end, God gives crowns to those who are kept by evil by choice, not by force, right? So this kind of talks a little bit to our current state. I mean, you see a lot of people saying, we need to pass more Christian laws. We need to force everyone to be Christian. We need to make them into Christians. Do we? Is that what Christ taught us? Or did he teach us to be light? Light of the world. Does that convince anyone to say, you know what, if you do this thing, I'm going to pass a law, I'm going to put you in jail? Did you make them into a Christian? Do they love Jesus now? Are they going to love Jesus more, or when they see your own love of Christ and your own love for them, will they go, hey, what are you? And you say, I'm a Christian. Like, I want that. I want to be like you. Again, St. John Chrysostom says, if you're a Christian, you don't have a home on earth. If the whole of the inhabited world becomes ours, we're still wayfaring strangers. We've been given citizenship of heaven, and that's where we live. And I want to point to this point because sometimes we think that our job is to transform the world. And it is to transform the world, but how we transform it is more important than the transformation. Because this world is not ours, right? And Christ said, in the world you will have tribulation. The world is a fallen world. It's a broken world. And so if I want to transform it, how do I transform it? It's too much to transform, right? In fact, have you ever tried to change just like another person? Like, ask your mom, has she been able to change your dad? She'll say, la, zay mahowa, nila, right? And she'll complain about him 30 years, same thing, still puts his underwear in the wrong place. She can't change one man, right? She can't. And she's been spending her whole life using every weapon at her disposal to try to change him, and she can't. And he asked the guy, are you able to change your wife? Nope, she does the same thing. She does whatever she wants to do. I can't control her, blah, 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 right? So let's think about that. If a husband can't change his wife, and a wife can't change her husband after 30 years of marriage, you think you're going to change the world? Are you crazy? And that's why I'm on college campuses all the time, and I see these signs, you can change the world. And I just think to myself, no, you can't. You can't even change you. Just try to change you. If you can change you, mega. Thank God. Go spend 10 years trying to change you. And let me know how that goes. It's really hard. And then we lie to the kids and say, change the world. You ain't changing the world, bro. You can't even change your own habits. Right?
We don't see anything long enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. That's true.
We don't see a reason to change.
That's right. Well, I mean, I'm perfect, Yanni, but others aren't. Yeah, I get that. And so Mother Teresa says, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. When Mother Teresa won the Nobel Prize, they asked her, and they said, you didn't solve homelessness in Calcutta. You didn't solve hunger in Calcutta. One city, and you couldn't even fix it. Her answer, that was not my objective. I'm not a not-for-profit organization that's trying to solve homelessness or, poverty. My job is to love people. And she's like, that I did do. And so you see her interaction, it's one person at a time, right? And this is what we do as Christians. We don't try to fix everybody. There's one person standing in front of me, that's the most important person in the world. And I'm going to look that person in the eye and I'm going to show them love. Did I solve the homeless problem in Southern California? Probably not. Am I going to? No. Am I going to change the world? No. But I can help this one person. There's a great story about starfish. I don't know if I have these slides, but this father and his son were walking on the beach, and the shore had come in, and then the current went out very quickly, and so it stranded a whole thousands of starfish on the beach. And so, the son's like, Dad, all the starfish, the sun's out. Starfish die very quickly if they're not in the water, right? They can't survive very long in the sun. So he's like, Dad, all these starfish are going to die. There's like 1,000 starfish here, and they're all going to die, right? They're all going to dry out. And so the dad walks up and he takes a starfish and he throws it back in the water. And then he picks another and he throws it back in the water. And the son's like, what are you doing? You're not going to save there's thousands of starfish here. You're not going to make a difference. You're not even making a dent in the thousands of starfish, right? And so his dad picks up another one and he throws it in the water and he goes, well, I just saved that one. I made a difference to that one. And he picks up, I made a difference to that one. And so then the son started picking up starfish and throwing them back in the water. And the idea was, the son was like, there's millions here, there's thousands of starfish, you can't save them. That's not my objective, right? I can save one person. I can help one person, right? Again, this idea of micro versus macro, right? Stay small, right? Don't try to save the world and all the things, right? Stay small. Very small, me. First and foremost. And in this sense, it's okay to be a little selfish. It's okay to focus on my salvation first. And if I feel like a relationship with someone else is going to jeopardize my salvation, it's okay to protect this. This is the core. Once this goes, my relation with God goes, everything goes. I can't help anybody. It's kind of like on an airplane, when they say put the mask on first before helping others. Right? When you're out and you're unconscious, you can't help anyone else. You can't help your children. Right? So you put your mask on first. That's always the focus of Christianity. And then we move out from there. All right, I'll stop there. Anybody have any other questions, comments? Yes?
I feel like there's always this concept of, like, when people do tend to stop coming to churches because, I went to church and everyone there is just terrible. Like, everyone there was judging me or this, that, and the third. And just this concept, how do you feel like if you are reaching out to just that one person and like hey, like why don't you just try to be with us, and then it's like everyone is just terrible there.
Well, so this idea of micro versus macro morality works in both directions, right? So it works, and it's Satan's weapon, right? So Satan's weapon is forget you, go make everybody else good, okay? That's option one, right? But then option two is, again, forget you, but just look at everyone else's sins, right? So I walk into church, I look at that guy, go, that uncle, he cheats on his taxes. And that guy over there, he yelled, and I saw him yell at a kid. And I saw that guy beat his wife. And I saw this guy, and this stunt judges me. And this person, blah, blah, blah. And this deacon is whatever, right? So again, if I'm Satan, I can just get you to look at someone other than yourself, then I win, right? And so the person who says, well, there's sinners in the church, is what this person is saying, right? You kind of look at them and go, uh-huh. Right? So the problem here is that somewhere in this person's education, he was told that sinners aren't in the church, right? Good people are at church, right? The people at church are good, are righteous, okay? That's a very dangerous teaching. It's blasphemous, right? The people at church aren't good. We're all bad, but we have Christ's blood over us, right? So we don't go to church to become righteous, good, holy people. We come to church because we're broken and we're sinful. And if you come to church and you don't feel broken and sinful, then don't come. Right? Christ said, the doctor comes for those who are sick, not those who are well. If you're well, you should just stay home, right? And so the problem is sometimes we tell people that it's the good people are at church, and you go to church to meet good people, and we're all righteous at church. Well, then what happens when I sin and I do something really bad? Am I going to want to come? No, because all the people are righteous, and they're going to judge me. And unfortunately, the people at church think they're righteous, which is very dangerous, right? And so the problem here is we have taught them that, this isn't a place for sinners, but it is. This is a place for broken, sinful people. This is where we come to get healed. This is where we come to get life and to start over. So, what you have to tell that person is, look, everyone in that church is just as broken as you are. Right? We're all broken. And we all come because we're broken. That's why we're here. Right? And if he says, well, these people, it's like, yeah, okay, so there's sinful people in the church? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else you got? Right? Give them perspective. But I will say that it's very frustrating. Sometimes, Abuna, the servants, work very, very hard to get someone to come to church. Spend months and months and months trying to convince someone. And then they finally come and some person, fires a shot and says, "Intilap sa'e," and that person's like, "I'm done." And you're like, good gosh, we spent 200 hours on this. And one person who's now very, very self-righteous and full of righteousness because she defended the church from the bad people. That's like, the church isn't to be defended from bad people. It's to encourage the bad people. Bad people come here. We're for the bad people. Right? And it's sad. It's frustrating. I was just having a conversation with someone today. And I said, when something like this happens, and then, the person is so self-righteous and tells everyone about the horrible girl who's, instead of a collar here, she had her cut here, right? And that's, and how she defended the church, and she's telling all her family. It's like, and then we blame the kid, and we say, oh, look at the kids. The kids are so bad. The Americans have ruined them. See what the kids are doing. And we blame the kids like, you did this. They didn't leave because of the Americans. They left because of you. You did this, And maybe we should have them stand up at church and say, let's talk about what you did. Hey, everybody, this person shamed and attacked another person, and now that person isn't in church. Maybe we should do that every once in a while. كده بس احترم نفسهم شوي.
But I think actually there's a confusion between how to teach people how to respect the church and between scolding people for doing it. It's a fine line. It's hard.
Yeah.
Some people do it out of not knowing how to advise.
Yeah.
Or I think it's what's your perspective on how to balance between the two? How to keep the respect to the house of God, and at the same time not to offend people.
I mean, my personal opinion is, like I said before, it's a calling. Not everybody is called to turn around as ibnak rabbi ibnak, or attack someone, or that's not everyone's job. I think in our culture we have a little bit of, my job is to, and to be honest, I think this comes from Islam, because in Islam, God wants you to shame people, attack people. Like, it's your job, if you see a woman not dressed properly, to say something to her, or attack her, or kill her, And so I think we get a little bit of that from that. I have to, la habibi, who said that? Not everybody has this, right? And if you want to show, there's nothing, and I remember as a child seeing the one uncle deacon who's just praying. Million lessons. That one was the lesson. Watching him in the liturgy. Angel, full concentration. You want to teach me respect? That's how you teach me respect. You respect. Right? And that is more of a lesson than any words you're going to say, especially about clothing, or crossing your legs, or intilap sa'e, or You want to teach respect? And maybe it won't happen this week or next week, and I want immediate results, right? I want a kid he's 7, I want him to stop right now. But I want him to be respectful when he's 37. That's when I really want him to. He's 7 now. Let him be 7, right? But let him see respect. And when he's 27 or 17, he'll come around, And again, I always in our church, there's a few people who do a few things that are beautiful, very very respectful to the church, and then you see some of the youth imitating them, and it's nice to see, like the same actions, right? They're watching, and they're taking that reverence, you know, from the holy people, not from the people who talk. In fact, that's our next slide. People don't need to hear about Christ anymore. They have heard enough. They need to see Christ in us. Right? So I think, you know, we encourage a little bit too much, yani, until you have to defend the church. And best then, you know.
They even push us. People push the clergy to take action against others.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
I'm
People
sure.
come and complain. Like, how come women are sitting next to men? Shouldn't be they separated? It's not fun for me to come sit
Yeah.
in a row and then I find everyone sitting down and they're dressing. Someone came literally and told me that. It's not your business. Go sit at another row. You can just come pray. But the problem is they try to come to, because they think that when it comes from the clergy with authority, we can do it.
Yeah.
But it's even worse.
Yeah.
When we come to speak to someone, when we approach someone to tell them something, it's a lot worse than an uncle.
For sure, yeah.
يعني خلاص Abuna said, he puts an X on the church, on Abuna, and the clergy, on all the churches. So it's a lot harder. I'm just saying that the problem.
Yeah.
They find other ways to make it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Abuna Lo'a had a very, a very nice expression. You know, he would say, you know, the people that complain about the kids crying or the noise or the whatever, they're not praying. And that's why they're complaining, right? I mean, the person who's praying doesn't notice some kid behind them crying or someone dressed or whatever. They're in another world, right? So the fact that you noticed all these things means you're not praying anyway, you know? And then you're just looking for stuff, right? You're bored.
True.
All right, any other questions? I think I've talked your ear off now. Any comments, criticisms, complaints? تاني مرة هتفون تهرت حرام عليكي التليفون